Hello everybody, welcome to Season 7 of the Grand Prix Manager 2 series with the 1986 mod. Now before we start with the driver lineup, I do have something to talk about, and that is I got a comment about mentioning engine upgrades for the season. Now I got another comment about this a while ago, and I was originally going to consider adding them at the start of the 1987 mod. However, I thought about it and I decided I will actually start doing it now because of how long it takes me to record and edit the each season out. So to those two people who gave me those comments, thank you very much for giving me them, and I will absolutely take that on board, and I will be going ahead with the idea. So anyway, with that out of the way, let's now look at the driver lineup. To begin with, as usual, the drivers who were driving last season who aren't going to be driving for any team this season, and they both happen to be Ossella drivers, Ricard Tracy and Alan Berg. We'll start by last year's bottom of the table, Terrell. Really are new, and Joseph Garza is still driving for Terrell this season, and A. Cheever remains as their test driver. Next up, the second to last team, which was 10th place in the last season, is Ferrari, and the driver lineup is exactly the same as well, with Ayrton Senna, Joy Dumfries driving, and their test driver being Louis Perez-Sala. Next up was the team from 9th place, Lotus, and the same story with Terrell and Ferrari. Their driver lineup is 100% the same from last season, with Streif, Warwick, and Philippe Alliot. Next team is Minardi, who finished 8th last season, and once again it's the same driver lineup with Teo Fabi and Pierluigi Martini, with their test driver being Alessandro Nannini. Next up, one of the teams that tied for 6th place is Brabham. And Brabham have got Christian Dana, who was their test driver last season, as their driver number 1. Driver number 2 is Mike Facco, who was Williams' second driver last season, and Jan Lammers, who was Benetton's test driver, is now Brabham's test driver. The other team that tied for 6th was Arrows, and all Arrows done is change the number 1 driver for Adrian Campos, who was at Brabham last season. Mark Stewart is still the driver number 2, and Satoru Nakajima is the test driver. Next up, the team that tied for 4th in the Constructors Championship last season, they only changed their number 1 driver. They got Michele Alboreto, who was at Brabham last season, Roberto Guerrero remains as the driver number 2, and Andrew Chesworth remains as driver number 3. Now on to us, Ossella. Not only did we get a massive shift in the driver lineup, we also changed engine supplier. We are the only team to have done that. We are no longer with Renault, we are now with Honda. Driver number 1 is Roberto Moreno, who got promoted from driver number 2 last season. Alan Jones, who was at driver number 1 at Arrows last season, is now our driver number 2. The reason we got him was simply because if we got Alan Jones, we would be able to get Honda for free. The Stefano Mondina, who wasn't driving last season, is our test driver. Third place team from last season is Benetton, and Alan Prost is still the driver number 1. Nelson Piquet, who won the last season, has joined Benetton as their driver number 2. Keke Rosberg, who was McLaren's test driver, is now Benetton's test driver. Next up, the runners-up of last season, Haas Lola, and the driver lineup has remained exactly the same. Ella D'Angelo is driver number 1, Ginzani number 2, and Tarquini as the test driver. Last but not least, it is the champions of last season, McLaren, and they've had a major overhaul when it comes to the driver lineup. Martin Brundle, who was at Benetton last season, Giacomelli, who was at Ferrari last season, and Ivan Capelli, who wasn't driving at all last season, make the driver lineup for this season of the 1986 mod. So with all the driver lineups complete, let's get on to round 1. Actually, just before the start of the first round of the season, here is the full transfer list of the drivers. The results from the first qualifying round of the season shows Roberto Reo taking pole position for Ossella, Michele Ghinzani second place in the Ossella, Brundle third in the McLaren, Alboreto in fourth, and both Benetton drivers of Nelson Piquet and Alain Prost fifth and sixth on the grid. Bruno Giacomelli qualified seventh on the grid, who is in the other McLaren, and the other Ossella driver of Alan Jones qualified ninth place on the grid. Now off the start line, both drivers held into positions, Roberto Reo in first and Alan Jones in ninth. After the first pit stop time was complete, Roberto Reo was still leading the Grand Prix, Martin Brundle in the McLaren is in second, Ghinzani third in the Ossella. Both Benettons were fourth and fifth, and Michele Alboreto rounded off the top six. Remember, since McLaren won the constructors last season and quite a few seasons, we'll be focusing on their performance this season. As speaking of that, Giacomelli moved up to sixth since Alboreto came to the pits just there. After both the Ossella drivers made their second final pit stop for the Grand Prix, Moreno was leading with Brundle in second, Ghinzani third, Piquet fourth, the other McLaren of Giacomelli in fifth, and the other Benetton of Alain Prost in sixth place. With very few laps left to go for the first round of the season, Bruno Giacomelli in the McLaren had retired from the Grand Prix, and he was shortly followed by one of the tail drivers and Roberto Guerrero, but they were not even close to the points yet. Renier knew the tail driver had retired. So, not a great start to the season for McLaren to defend their title. However, Moreno won, Brundle, the other McLaren, did get second, Prost got the final podium in the Benetton, Alboreto fourth in the Williams, Ghinzani fifth for Ossella, and the other Benetton driver, Nelson Piquet, in sixth position. Now it was time for round 2, which is the Spanish Grand Prix at Jerez. Roberto Reo once again getting pole position, Alain Prost is second in the Benetton, Michele Alboreto is third in the Williams, Martin Brundle getting fourth for his McLaren, Roberto Guerrero in fifth in the other Williams, and the other McLaren driver of Bruno Giacomelli in sixth position, with Alan Jones qualifying all the way down in 12th place on the grid. Off the start line, both drivers held onto the positions of 1st and 12th. With the first pit stops done for the Ossella drivers, Roberto Guerrero was leading in his Williams, Moreno was in second, De Angelis third in the Ossella, both Benettons fourth and fifth, and Martin Brundle off the top six ahead of his McLaren teammate Bruno Giacomelli. Just after Reo made his second pit stop of the race, and just before Jones made his second pit stop, Bruno Giacomelli, who dropped down to 9th place, had retired in his McLaren, which means it looks like McLaren are going to struggle this season to defend their title at this point. Roberto Guerrero was leading after Jones' second pit stop, Prost in second, Moreno dropped to third, Brundle's in fourth in the other McLaren, Ella De Angelis fifth in the Ossella, and the other Benetton driver Nelson Piquet is in sixth. Lap 55 of the Grand Prix, Adrian Campos retired, but so did the Ossella driver Alan Jones for the second time this season in a row. Not looking great for Ossella already. The race ended with Roberto Guerrero winning the Spanish Grand Prix for Williams, Alain Prost came second in the Benetton, Moreno third in the Ossella, Martin Brundle fourth in the McLaren, Ella De Angelis fifth in the Ossella, and the final point went to Nelson Piquet in sixth place. Round 3, the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola sees Roberto Reo taking pole position with Roberto Guerrero in second place in the grid, Martin Brundle takes third in the McLaren, Michele Alboreto fourth in the Williams, and both Ossellas rounded off the top 6. Alan Jones qualified 15th for Ossella, and the other McLaren driver Bruno Giacomelli qualified in 8th place. During the formation lap, Mark Suhr, who qualified 11th place in the grid, had stalled his car, so he had to start from the pit lane. Now off the start line, both Ossella drivers did hold into positions, Roberto Reo keeping the lead, but Alan Jones got a place up to 14th thanks to Mark Suhr's stall. After both Ossella drivers made their first pit stops, Guerrero was leading with Moreno in second, Brundle in 3rd, Alboreto 4th, De Angelis 5th, and Teo Fabi in the Minardi 6th place, while Bruno Giacomelli had dropped all the way down to 11th in the other McLaren. After the first set of pit stops was complete for Ossella, Roberto Guerrero was leading with Roberto Moreno in 2nd, Martin Brundle 3rd in the McLaren, Teo Fabi 4th in the Minardi, Alboreto 5th in the Williams, and Ella De Angelis in 6th place, while Bruno Giacomelli had retired from the Grand Prix, so once again putting the defending champions in a struggle to keep their title. The race came to an end with Roberto Guerrero winning the San Marino Grand Prix, with Roberto Moreno taking 2nd. The McLaren driver Martin Brundle got the final podium spot, with Teo Fabi 4th in the Minardi, Michele Alboreto 5th in the other Williams, and Ella De Angelis rounded off the top 6 in the Haas Lola. After 3 rounds in the championship standings, Roberto Moreno has a slight edge over Guerrero, and Martin Brundle, the top McLaren driver, in 3rd place in the Drivers Championship. Now we will look at the constructors. Williams just got the edge over Ossella, who've also just got an edge over McLaren. Round 4 was Monte Carlo for the Monaco Grand Prix, with Nelson Piquet in pole position with Ghinzani in 2nd. Both McLarens are 3rd and 4th in the grid, and both arrows complete the 3rd row. Alan Jones is in 12th and Moreno 14th. 5 people did not make the 107% time, however, Joy Dumfries, Senna and Thacko will be taking part, as Alboreto and Streif are spared and will be able to take part. Off the start line, Alan Jones got to 13th place, Roberto Moreno dropped from 14th to 15th. Half of the first set of pit stops was complete for Ossella. Bruno Giacomelli was leading in the McLaren, with Ghinzani in 2nd, Adrian Campos 3rd in the Arrows, with Martin Brundle 4th in the other McLaren, Alan Prost 5th in the Benetton, and right at the top 6 with Mark Suhr in the other Arrows. After the second pit stop was completed for the Ossella drivers, Bruno Giacomelli was still leading in the McLaren, with Adrian Campos now in 2nd place. Prost was 3rd in the Benetton, with Ghinzani went from 2nd to 4th. Mark Suhr got up to 5th place in the Arrows, and Pierluigi Martini rounded off the top 6 for Minardi. The race came to an end with Adrian Campos winning the Monaco Grand Prix, with Bruno Giacomelli taking 2nd, Alan Prost getting 3rd in the Benetton, Mark Suhr 4th for Arrows, Ghinzani 5th for Hassola, and the final point went to Martin Brundle, who finished in 6th. And in the Drivers' Championship, Roberto Moreno and Roberto Guerrero tying at the top of the table, with Alan Prost and Martin Brundle both closely behind them in the Drivers' Championship. And then, moving on to the Constructors' Championship, Williams with a 3-point lead over McLaren, and Ossella just 1 point behind, who is also 1 point ahead of Benetton. Round 5 was the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, with both Osellas taking the front row. Ayrton Senna is 3rd in the Ferrari, Nelson Piquet 4th in the Benetton, Prost in the other Benetton 5th, and Joy Dumfries in the other Ferrari rounded off the top 6, with Williams, who are currently leading the Constructors' Championship, with Guerrero in 9th place and the other Williams driver of Michele Alboreto 17th. And the McLarens, also the defending champions, qualifying in 19th for Martin Brundle and Giacomelli 21st. Off the start line, both drivers held the positions, maintaining 1st and 2nd positions. After the first pit stop of the race, Alan Jones was leading the Grand Prix, with Alain Prost taking 2nd in the Benetton. Roberto Moreno in the other Ossella was in 3rd, Teo Fabi got to 4th in the Minardi, Martin Brundle 5th in the McLaren, and René Arnoux rounded off the top 6 in the Tyrrell. With very few laps left to go, René Arnoux had retired from 6th position, which was a huge blow. That allowed the Brabham driver of Christian Dana to get into the top 6 and potentially score a point for Brabham. Then Bruno Giacomelli, who was down in 15th, had retired for the McLaren, so Giacomelli's retirement wasn't going to make much of an impact. Roberto Guerrero had also retired for Williams, who are currently leading the Constructors' Championship up to that point. The race ended with Alan Jones winning the Grand Prix for Ossella. Alan Prost got 2nd in the Benetton, Roberto Moreno was in 3rd for the other Ossella, Teo Fabi got 4th for Minardi, Martin Brundle 5th for McLaren, and Christian Dana got the final point in 6th. Just before round 6, which was going to be the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, Philippe Streiff had suffered a race injury and he would be out for 8 Grand Prix, which means he wouldn't return until the second to last race of the season. So round 6 of the 7th season of the 986 mod was indeed Monza for the Italian Grand Prix. Philippe Alliot, who is replacing Streiff while he is off injured, qualified in pole position ahead of Roberto Moreno in second. Alan Jones was qualified in third place in the other Ossella ahead of one of the Williams drivers of Alboreto in fourth. Roberto Guerrero fifth for Williams, and the two McLaren 6th and 7th place on the grid. And 3 drivers failed to make the 107% time and will not be taking part are both the Ferrari drivers of Dumfries and Senna and José Garza in the Tyrrell. Off the start line, both drivers held the positions of 2nd and 3rd, still behind Philippe Alliot. After the first set of pit stops was complete for both cell drivers, Roberto Moreno was leading the Grand Prix. Actually, Alan Jones was ahead of Roberto Moreno in the race, with Philippe Alliot in 3rd place. Nelson Piquet was in 4th place in the Benetton, El De Angelis 5th in the Hasola, and Adrian Campos around the top 6, while the 2 McLaren drivers of Giacomelli down in 7th and Martin Brundle in 9th, while the Williams, who are currently leading the Constructors Championship, Albert and Guerrero 10th and 11th. After the second pit stop was completed for the Ossella drivers, Alan Jones was still leading the Grand Prix, with Roberto Moreno in 2nd, Philippe Alliot was in 3rd place, El De Angelis in 4th, Alan Prost was in 5th place, and Alboreto, one of the Williams drivers, in 6th. The 2 McLaren drivers of Giacomelli and Brundle were in 7th and 9th, and the other Williams driver of Guerrero in 11th. With not many laps left to go, Alan Jones had retired from the lead of the Grand Prix. That let Miguel Ginzani get into the points position until Bruno Giacomelli takes the 6th place spot away from him in his McLaren. The race ended with Roberto Moreno winning the Grand Prix. Philippe Alliot, on his first race to replace Philippe Streiff, got 2nd, El De Angelis 3rd in the Hasola, Alan Prost finishing 4th for Benetton, Alboreto getting 5th for Williams, and Miguel Ginzani getting the final point in the other Hasola. Round 7 was the Detroit City for the United States Grand Prix. Both Benettons take the front row, with both Williams taking the second row. Roberto Guerrero qualifying 5th in the Ossella, and Teo Fabi round the top 6. The McLaren drivers of Bruno Giacomelli 9th and Martin Brundle 21st and will not be taking part for the Grand Prix. Neither is Joey Dumfries in the Ferrari or Adrian Campos in the Arrows. The other Ossella driver of Alan Jones qualified 15th and outside of the 107% time. Off the start line, both drivers held the positions, Moreno 5th and Alan Jones 15th. After the first pit stop was completed, both Benettons were still 1st and 2nd. Guerrero was in 3rd, Michele Alboreto 4th, Derek Warwick in 5th, and Teo Fabi round the top 6, while both Ocellas are 7th and 12th. The 2 McLarens of Giacomelli, Giacomelli himself is in 9th, and then obviously 2 Williams is 3rd and 4th. On lap 50 and 47 of the Grand Prix for both my drivers, they both retired at the same time. So both Benettons were still leading, both Williams 3rd and 4th, Fabian 5th and Warwick 6th. So Giacomelli 7th and the last driver, Mike Sackwell, in the Brabham in 8th. On lap 65 of the Grand Prix, Bruno Giacomelli had to retire from 7th place, so there were only 7 runners left. That includes both Benetton drivers and both Williams drivers who are already in contention to battle for the title of the Constructors Championship, trying to dethrone McLaren. The race ended with Alan Prost winning the Grand Prix, Guerrero getting 2nd in the Williams, Piquet 3rd in the other Benetton, 4th was the other Williams of Alboreto, Derek Warwick 5th for Lotus, and Teo Fabi rounded off the top 6. Round 8 was Paul Ricard for the French Grand Prix, seeing Alan Prost taking pole position in the Benetton, El De Angelis 2nd in the Hasola, Roberto Moreno 3rd in the Ossella, Ayrton Senna 4th in the Ferrari, and both arrows of Mark Surer and Adrian Campos rounded off the top 6. The Lotus driver that's replacing the injured Streif, Philippe Alliot, qualified in 18th place on the grid. The other Ossella driver, Alan Jones, qualified 21st, and the defending champions of McLaren qualifying 13th and 14th. Off the start line, both drivers held positions which were 3rd and 21st positions. Lap 18 of the Grand Prix, Philippe Alliot, who was in 15th place, had retired from the Grand Prix, so not good for the driver replacing Streif for the next 6 races. After both Ossella drivers completed their first pit stops of the race, Elliot Andrews was leading in the Haslot with Alain Prost in 2nd place. Roberto Moreno was in 3rd with René Arnoux in 4th place in the Tyrrell, Marc Stewart in 5th, and the final point position held by Ayrton Senna in the Ferrari. With both Ossella drivers finishing their 2nd and final pit stops of the race, Elliot Andrews was still in the lead, Alain Prost was in 2nd, René Arnoux got up to 3rd place in the Tyrrell, Roberto Moreno in 4th, Marc Stewart in 5th, and Christian Danner rounded off the top 6. Lap 64 of the French Grand Prix sees one of the McLaren drivers, Bruno Giacomelli, retiring from 8th place, while the other McLaren driver, Martin Brundle, in 9th still in the race, while René Arnoux, who was in 3rd place, had retired, which let Adrian Campos get into the points position in his Arrows. Just before the end of the race, Adrian Campos had retired from 6th place in his Arrows, which let Ayrton Senna get in 6th place just at the end. Elliot Andrews won the Paul Ricard Grand Prix, with Alain Prost in 2nd, Roberto Moreno in 3rd, Marc Stewart 4th, Christian Danner 5th, and like I said, Ayrton Senna getting the final point in 6th place. Looking at the Drivers' Championship, Alain Prost with a 2-point lead over Roberto Moreno in 2nd, with a 12-point lead over Guerrero, and in the Constructors' Championship, Ossella 1 point ahead of Benetton, with a further 10 points ahead of Williams. Just before starting the second half of the season, 2 more drivers have been injured. Christian Danner is out for the next race, while Giacomelli is out for 5 races, so for Brabham they need their reserve driver, and McLaren sticking to their policy of not having a second driver, which means for the next 5 races, Martin Brundle is on his own, and Philippe Streif is still out, so Philippe Alliot is still driving. Now, on to the qualifying results for the Brands Hatch Grand Prix. Roberto Moreno gained pole position, Martin Brundle in 2nd, Michele Alboreto 3rd in the Williams, Piquet Genzani 4th for Hasola, Nelson Piquet 5th in the other Benetton, and Roberto Guerrero in 6th place. Now, the 2 replacement drivers, Philippe Alliot had qualified down in 10th place in the grid just behind his teammate, and Jan Lammers, who was replacing Christian Danner for this one race, qualified down in 18th, while the other Ossella driver of Alan Jones 20th. Off the start line, Roberto Moreno held on to the lead while Alan Jones was still in 20th. Just after Moreno came into the pits and just before Alan Jones came into the pits, Piquet Genzani had retired from 3rd place, as well as Prost and Guerrero just shortly afterwards. With both Ossella drivers' first pit stops completed, Michele Alboreto was leading, with Piquet in 2nd, Moreno in 3rd, Martin Brundle in the McLaren 4th, Elliot Andrews in 5th, and Pierluigi Martini in 6th, while the 2 reserve drivers are Philippe Alliot in 7th and Jan Lammers in 13th. Lap 45 of the Grand Prix, Martin Brundle and Elliot Andrews retired from 4th and 5th. That let Teo Fabian, the Minardi, and René Arnoux to get into the top 6. After the final pit stops were made for the race, Alboreto was still in the lead, Piquet was in 2nd, Philippe Alliot had gone to 3rd, both Minardis 4th and 5th, and Roberto Moreno ran off the top 6, Jan Lammers, the other reserve driver, in 10th place in the Brabham. The race came to an end with Alboreto winning Brands Hatch. Nelson Piquet finishes in 2nd, Philippe Alliot got the final podium spot, both Minardis and Ossella getting 4th, 5th and 6th. Round 10 was Hockenheim for the German Grand Prix, seeing both Arrows taking the front row, Roberto Guerrero in 3rd place on the grid, Alain Prost in 4th, Roberto Moreno in 5th, and Nelson Piquet rounded off the top 6, while the McLaren driver of Martin Brundle in 10th and Philippe Alliot in 11th place on the grid. As you can see, there are 5 people missing. McLaren's because of the policy, Brabham, and it was the other, the 2 teams missing are Brabham and Terrell. They're both missing, but Joy Dumfries will also be joined be the 6th person to be missing out on the Grand Prix. Off the start line, Roberto Moreno lost position, so he dropped down to 6th, while Alan Jones held on to 15th. After the first stops were completed, both Arrows were still leading the Grand Prix, with Alan Prost in 3rd, Roberto Guerrero was in 4th, Piquet in 5th, and the other Williams of Alboreto in 6th, while Philippe Alliot was down in 10th place. But then again, Alan Jones had just retired from the Grand Prix from 14th place. By lap 22 of the German Grand Prix, Philippe Alliot, who dropped down to 11th, had retired from the Grand Prix. After Roberto Moreno completed his final pit stop of the race, both Arrows were still 1st and 2nd, Prost then started in the Benetton, Guerrero in 4th, Piquet in 5th, and Alboreto rounded off the top 6. Meanwhile, the defending champions of McLaren, Martin Brundle, down in 9th. With 2 laps remaining in the German Grand Prix, Nelson Piquet retired from 5th place, which let Roberto Moreno get into the top 6 to score a point. Then the race ended with an Arrows 1-2, with Alain Prost in 3rd, both Williams 4th and 5th, and round for top 6, Roberto Moreno. Just before the 11th round of the Grand Prix, Ossella has an injured driver in the form of Alan Jones, so he would be out for 2 races. Felix Streif still hasn't returned, Christian Dana is obviously returned, and Jack Moley still hasn't returned yet, so we still have 2 reserve drivers in the season so far. Round 11, which was Interlagos for the Brazilian Grand Prix, sees both Ocellas making the front row, including the reserve driver Stefano Mondina. Alain Prost is 3rd for Benetton, Martin Brundle 4th for McLaren, José Garza 5th for Terrell, and Roberto Guerrero rounded off the top 6. The only driver that wouldn't be taking part for the Grand Prix is René Arnoux in the Terrell. Off the start line for the Brazilian Grand Prix, Roberto Moreno, who qualified in pole position, had stalled his car so he was out of the Grand Prix, so Stefano Mondina had taken the lead of the race. Meanwhile, Martin Brundle had retired in his McLaren. After Stefano Mondina had completed his pit stop, he was leading the Grand Prix with Alboreto in 2nd, both Benetton starting 4th, De Angelis in 5th, and Roberto Guerrero in 6th place. For a moment it was quite confusing where the positions actually were, because the screen had messed up, so the positions were eventually fixed, with Moreno 1st and all that. On the 34th lap of the Brazilian Grand Prix, Philippe Alliot, who got to 13th place, had retired from the Grand Prix. After the second pit stop was complete for Stefano Mondina for Ossella, Mondina was still leading the Grand Prix with Michele Alboreto in 2nd, Nelson Piquet in 3rd, El De Angelis in 4th, Roberto Guerrero in 5th, and Derek Wark rounded off the top 6. On the 59th lap of the Grand Prix, Nelson Piquet had retired from 3rd place. That let Marc Suhr to get into the top 6 in his Arrows. The race came to an end with Stefano Mondina winning the Brazilian Grand Prix, with Michele Alboreto in 2nd and El De Angelis getting the final podium spot in the half Lola. Taking 4th place was Roberto Guerrero in 4th, Derek Wark in 5th, and Marc Suhr got the final point in 6th place. Round 12 is the Austrian Grand Prix for the A1 ring. Roberto Guerrero getting pole position in the Williams, with Nelson Piquet in 2nd in the Benetton, Theo Fabi 3rd for Minardi, Michele Alboreto 4th for Williams, Alain Prost 5th for Benetton, and Miguel Gonzalez round off the top 6. Stefano Mondina, the reserve driver, in 11th, and the other driver, Roberto Moreno, in 18th place on the grid, and the reserve driver for Lotus, Philippe Alliot, in 12th place on the grid. Derek Wark, El De Angelis, and Mike Thackwell will not be taking part for the Grand Prix. Off the start line for the Grand Prix, Stefano Mondina gained 2 positions to get into 9th place, while Roberto Moreno was still in 17th place. Lap 23 of the Austrian Grand Prix, Roberto Moreno had retired from 15th place. After the first pit stop was completed for Ossella, Guerra was leading the Grand Prix with Nelson Piquet in second, Alboreto in third, Ghinzani fourth, Prost in fifth, and Adrian Campos rounded off the top six. Lap 38 of the Austrian Grand Prix sees another driver retiring from the Grand Prix, and that would be Philippe Alliot from 10th place. Lap 55 of the Austrian Grand Prix sees Nelson Piquet retiring from the lead of the Grand Prix. That helped put Teo Fabi into the points by that point of the race. After the second pit stop was completed, Roberto Guerra was leading the Grand Prix with Michele Ghinzani in second, Michele Alboreto in third for Williams, Teo Fabi in fourth, Adrian Campos in fifth, and Alain Prost rounding off the top six. The race came to an end with Roberto Guerra winning the Grand Prix, with Ghinzani finishing second for the Hasola, Michele Alboreto gaining third, Adrian Campos in fourth, Alain Prost in fifth, and rounding off the top six is Teo Fabi for Minardi. In the Drivers Championship, Alain Prost has a 5-point lead over Roberto Guerra, who is 1 point ahead of Roberto Moreno in the Drivers Championship. And in the Constructors Championship, Williams have a 14-point lead over Ossella, who all have the same amount of points as Benetton does. Round 13 was Silverstone British Grand Prix that sees Roberto Moreno taking pole, Nelson Piquet in second, Michele Alboreto in third, Ella De Angelis in fourth, Roberto Guerra in fifth, and Michael in sixth, and Benetton's other driver Alain Prost in seventh, with the McLaren driver of Martin Brundle in 10th, the other Ossella driver of Alan Jones in 15th place on the grid, and then we have the two reserve drivers of Philippe Alliot in 17th, and no, that's the only reserve driver currently. Remy Arnoux, Josel Garza and Federico Di Martini all would be taking part for the British Grand Prix. In the formation lap, Derek Warwick, who qualified 16th place in the grid, had stalled his car, so he had to start from the pit lane. And then, right off the start line, Roberto Moreno held into first place, while Alan Jones got up to 10th place. The 12th lap of the Grand Prix, Philippe Alliot, the reserve driver, had retired from 15th place. After both drivers made their pit stops, Piquet was leading the Grand Prix, both Williams in second and third, Ella De Angelis in fourth place for Hasola, Alain Prost in fifth for Benetton, and sixth place Michele Ghinzani. On the 41st lap, just before both cells came to the pits for their second final stop of the race, Roberto Moreno had retired from 9th place in the Grand Prix. So after Jones made his final pit stop, Ella De Angelis was leading Ella De Angelis leading, Alain Prost second, both Williams in third and fourth, Piquet fifth and Ghinzani in sixth. The race came to an end, but before that, Roberto Guerra, who led the Grand Prix, had ended up retiring from the race, which let Ella De Angelis win the race, Michele Alboreto, his teammate, second, Nelson Piquet and Alain Prost third and fourth, Michele Ghinzani in fifth, and Roberto Guerra, despite retiring, still managed to hold on to get at least a point for Williams. Round 14 is the Portuguese Grand Prix at Estoril. Roberto Moreno taking pole position, Roberto Guerra in second place, both Hasolas are third and fourth, Alan Jones in fifth, and Martin Brundle round of the top six in the lonely McLaren. The other Williams driver, Michele Alboreto, is in seventh, and the Benetton drivers of Piquet and Prost 13th and 16th. Derek Warwick, who has returned after his very long injury, is in 20th, while his teammate is behind him in 21st. In the formation lap, Mark Zeurer, who qualified in 8th place, installed his car, so he had to start from the pit lane. And then, right off the race, Roberto Moreno held into the lead, and Alan Jones actually got to 4th place. By the end of the first pit stops, Ella De Angelis was leading in the Hasola, Roberto Guerra was in second, Michele Ghinzani third, Moreno in fourth, Martin Brundle fifth, and Alboreto rounded off the top six. By lap 42 of the Grand Prix, Michele Ghinzani retired from 4th place. That let one of the Benetton drivers of Alain Prost get into the points. After the second pit stop was done, Ella De Angelis was still leading the race. Roberto Guerra was in second, Roberto Moreno in third, Martin Brundle fourth, Alboreto in fifth, and Alain Prost rounded off the top six. From 8th place, Alan Jones had retired from the Grand Prix again. The race ended with El De Angelis winning the Grand Prix, Roberto Guerrero was in 2nd, Roberto Moreno gets 3rd, Martin Brundle 4th, Michele Alboreto 5th, and the final point went to Alain Prost in the Benetton. The Drivers' Championship is a 5-horse race. Prost, Guerrero, Moreno, Alboreto and Angelis all in contention to win the Drivers' Championship this season of this 1986 mod. And the Constructors' Championship, Williams are in the lead, Benetton 2nd, Ossella in 3rd. Round 15 was at Mexico for the Mexican Grand Prix. Alain Prost in pole position, Martin Brundle in 2nd, Michele Alboreto in 3rd, Adrian Campos is 4th, Roberto Moreno in 5th, and El De Angelis rounded off the top 6. The other Williams driver of Guerrero is in 8th place in the grid, the Benetton of Nelson Piquet in 10th, and the other Ossella driver of Alan Jones 14th. High up the start line, both drivers held into positions of 5th place and 14th place. Lap 16 of the Grand Prix, Roberto Guerrero and Roberto Moreno, who were in 6th and 7th, have retired from the Grand Prix. Shortly after Guerrero and Moreno's retirement, Martin Brundle, who was in 2nd, had retired from the Grand Prix. That led Mark Stewart to get into the top 6 at that time. After the first pit stop was done for Alan Jones, Alain Prost was leading the race with Alboreto in 2nd, Adrian Campos is in 3rd, both Hassel is 4th and 5th, and Mark Stewart had rounded off the top 6. On the 41st lap of the race, Ginzani had retired from 6th place, so that lets Nelson Piquet to get his Benetton into the top 6. And Alan Jones had also retired from the Grand Prix, so Ossella out of the race. Tail Fabi had retired just outside the points also. Lap 61 of the Grand Prix, Mark Stewart had retired from 6th place. That let Christian Dana in the Brabham to get into the top 6 and could potentially score a point for Brabham. The race ended with Alain Prost winning the Mexican Grand Prix. Michele Alboreto finished in 2nd, Adrian Campos 3rd in the Arrows, El De Angelis 4th for Hassola, Nelson Piquet 5th in the other Benetton, and Christian Dana rounded off the top 6. With one race left to go, it was no longer mathematically possible to beat Alain Prost, so he has won this season of 1986 mod. And in the Constructors' Championship, it will be the very same story, as Williams could no longer be caught in the Constructors' Championship. Even if Benetton got a 1-2 finish and Williams got no points, they would still be 1 point short of beating Williams this season. The 16th and final Grand Prix taking place at Adelaide for the Australian Grand Prix, Roberto Moreno taking pole, both Williams is 2nd and 3rd, both Benettons 4th and 5th, and El Angelis rounded off the top 6. The return of the other McLaren car of Bruno Giacomelli qualifying in 9th, Alan Jones getting 11th in the other Ossella. Only one person will not be taking part for the final race, and that is the tail driver of René Arnoux. Off the start line, Moreno held on to lead, however Alan Jones lost the position and dropped down to 12th place. After the first pit stops was done for both Ossella drivers, Piquet was leading the race, both Williamses were 2nd and 3rd, the hassle of Picard Ginzani 4th, Alain Prost in 5th, and El De Angelis rounded off the top 6. Lap 51 of the Australian Grand Prix, Picard Ginzani had retired from 5th place. That let Martin Brundle to get into the top 6 in his McLaren. After both of us made their second pit stops, Roberto Guerrero had retired from 3rd place in his Williams. That let Moreno get into the top 6. But anyway, Alboreto was leading with both Benetton 2nd and 3rd, El De Angelis 4th, Martin Brundle 5th, and Roberto Moreno obviously in 6th place. The race had ended and Michele Alboreto won the Grand Prix. Both Benettons were 2nd and 3rd, El De Angelis finished in 4th, Martin Brundle 5th, and Christian Dana manages to get the final point in the Brabham. Looking at the driver standings for the last time this season, Alain Prost wins with 7 points to spare in this Benetton. the two Williams finishing second and third with 54 and 46 points respectively. Elliot Andrews in the Haas just 2 points behind Guerrero with 44, who was a further 2 points ahead of the top Ossella driver Roberto Moreno at 42. Then an 18-point gap separating 5th and 6th, with Nelson Piquet in the other Benetton in 6th place with 24 points. 2 points ahead of Adrian Campos in the Arrows, and who was a further 1 point ahead of Martin Brundle in the McLaren. Looking at page 2, Mark Stewart in 9th place, who was 5 points behind Martin Brundle in the other Arrows, just ahead of Picala Ginzani in the Hassler with 13 points. Philippe Alliot in the Lotus, who was the reserve driver of the season, with 10 points, with the same amount of points as Theo Fabi in the Minardi. The other two Ossella drivers, Jones and Medina, both on 9 points. Medina being the reserve driver now and Jones being the second driver. Bruno Giacomelli, who was missing for most of the season, only got 6 points in the McLaren, and Christian Dana gained those 2 points in the last 2 races to be the top Brabham driver with only 5 points. On page 3 we have Derek Warwick, who is driving for the entire season in the Lotus, unlike his number 1 driver Philippe Streif and the reserve driver Philippe Alliot. He could only get 4 points this season. Pierluigi Martini in the other Minardi only gets 3 points, and Ayrton Senna, the top Ferrari driver, with only 1 point. And now we have to look at the people who didn't score points at all this season. We have Joey Dumfries in the other Ferrari, Jan Lammers and Mike Sackwell, who are both driving for Brabham. But to be fair, Jan Lammers was only there for 1 race because I think it was Christian Danner that was injured for 1 race. Then you've got René Arnoux in the Tyrrell, and Philippe Streif, the other Lotus driver who got injured, no points. And page 4 only has 1 driver, it's Joe Salgarza, who also got no points this season for Tyrrell. So now the Drivers' Championship's done, let's look at the Constructors' Championship. Williams finishing with 100 points, which is a 1-2 finish ahead of Benetton with 85. Ossella proved to be best of the rest with 60 points, who was 25 behind Benetton, but they did get 3 more points than Haslola in 4th. Arrows getting 5th with 38 points. Martin Brundle got most of the points for McLaren in 6th, so McLaren had a really terrible tyre defense season. Lotus got 7th with 14 points, mainly because of the reserve driver, and Theo Fabi was the main reason that Minardi got 8th with 13 points. And we look at page 2 of the Constructors' Championship. Brabham got 5 points, Christian Danner scored all 5 of them, and Ferrari 10th place with only 1 point, with Ayrton Senna being the guy to score the point as Joey Dumfries didn't. And Tyrrell with Joe Salgarza and René Arnoux throughout the entire season failed to score a single point. And the engine improvements, I did promise you guys I will start showing them, so I'm going to do it now. Ford have improved their engine, but no one was driving for Ford this season, so not really going to make much of an impact unless someone uses Ford for the next season. Alfa Romeo have improved their engines, and the only team that was using Alfa this season was Minardi. So if Minardi are staying with Alfa Romeo, they'll have a slightly better engine, but will Minardi be more competitive? Probably not, but we'll have to see what Minardi does. Finally, we have BMW who improved their engine. Now, there were 2 teams that were using BMW engines this season. That was Haslola, who got 4th in the Constructors, and Benetton, who are 2nd in the Constructors. So BMW improving their engines. If they both are sticking to BMW for next season, then the Haslola might become more competitive, and Benetton might actually beat Williams for next season. But what will happen? Who knows? But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this season of Grand Prix Manager 2 1986 mods. I hope you enjoyed this season. What will happen next season? Well, one way to find out is by watching it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and goodbye!